Mr. President and gentlemen, ladies and Mr. President, I'm sure that all the ladies and gentlemen will see the matter just as I do. And I'm sure we're all very much obliged to these scientific gentlemen for quarreling. No, I don't mean that. That wouldn't be charitable, and it's a sin to steal a pen. But I mean for letting us hear them quarrel, and so eloquently, too, though. Of course, we don't understand what is the matter and which is the right, but of course we were very much delighted, and I might say quite interested to find that we all had hippopotamuses in our brains. Of course they're right, you know, because seeing is believing. Certainly, I never felt one in my head, but perhaps it's dead, so it didn't stir. And then, of course, that don't count, you know. A dead dog's as good as a live lion. No, stop. A live lion is as good as a dead dog. No, that won't do again. There's a mistake here somewhere. Well, what I was saying was, hippopotamuses. Well, I say, mine's dead. They say hippopotamuses feed on water. No, I don't think that, because teetotalers feed on water. And they're always lean, and the hippo's fat, at least in the zoo. Live water, it must be, and there's none in my brain. There was when I was a baby. My aunt says that, but they tapped me, so I suppose the hippopotamus died of drought. No, stop. It wasn't a hippopotamus after all. It was not hip hip hurrah, you know. That comes after dinner, and the section hasn't dined yet, at least since last night. And the Cambridge wine is very good. I will say that. No, I recollect now. Hippocampus it was. Hippocampus, a seahorse. I learned that at Eton. Hippo sea and campus a horse. No, campus a sea and a hippo's a horse. That's right. Only campus ain't a sea. It's a field. I know that. Campus Martius. I was swished at Eton for that. Nor to be again. I believe if every dog had his day. But at least it's a seahorse. I know that, because I saw one alive at Malta with the regiment, and it rang a bell. No, it was a canary that rang a bell, but this had a tail like a monkey, and it made a noise like a bell. I dare say you won't believe me, but upon my honor, I'm speaking the truth nonetheless. You know, it hadn't been taught all that, and perhaps if it had, it wouldn't have learnt, but it did. And it was a monkey's tail. No, stop. It must have been in its head, because it was in its brain, and everyone has brains in his head unless he's a skeleton, and it's curled its tail around things like a monkey, and I know, for I saw that with my own eyes. That was Professor Rollston's theory, you know. It was Professor Huxley who said it was in his tail, not Mr. Huxley's, of course, but the apes. Only apes have no tails, so I don't quite see that. And then the other gentleman who got a blast, Mr. Flower, you know, he said that it was all over the ape, everywhere. All hippocampuses from head to foot. Poor beast, like a dog all over ticks. I wonder why they don't rub bluestone into the back of its neck, as one does to a pointer. Well then, where was I? Oh, and Professor Owen said it wasn't in apes at all, but only in the order of Bamana. That's you and me. Well, he knows best, and they all know. They all know best, too, for they are monstrously clever fellows, they are. So one must be right and all the rest wrong. Or else one of them wrong and all the rest right. You see that, don't you? I wonder why they don't toss up that more often. If they took a half a crown now, a shilling, or even a fourpence, that would do, if it magnified it, and tossed heads and tails, or Newmarket, if they wanted to be quite sure, when there couldn't be any dispute among gentlemen after that, of course. Well then, about men and apes, I say, why shouldn't it be the other way, and the apes be men? Do you see? Because then they might have as many hippocampuses in their brains as they liked, or hippopotamuses either, indeed. I should be glad indeed if it was so, if it was only for my aunt's sake, for she says that her clergyman says that if anybody ever finds a hippopotamus in a monkey's head, nothing will save her great, I can't say how great, you see, it's awful to think, quite enormous grandfather, from having a monkey too, and then what is to become of her precious soul? So, for my aunt's sake, I should be very glad if it could be settled that way, really. And I'm sure the scientific gentlemen will take it into consideration because they are gentlemen, as everyone knows, and would not hurt a lady's feelings at all. The man who would strike a woman, everybody says that it's in Shakespeare. And besides, the niggers say that monkeys are men, only they won't work for fear of being made to talk. No, won't talk for fear of being made to work. That's what it is. That's right. And put their hands over their eyes at night for fear of seeing old gentlemen. And I'm sure that's just like a reasonable creature I used to when I was a little boy. And you see, niggers have lived among them for thousands of years and are monstrous like them, too. Do you see? And so they know best, and then it would be all right. Well, then, about a gulf. Professor Huxley says there's a gulf between a man and an ape. I'm sure glad of it, especially if the ape bit. And Professor Owen says there ain't. What? Am I wrong? Of course, yes. Beg 1,000 pardons, really. Of course, Professor Owen says there is, and Professor Huxley says there ain't. Well, a fellow can't recollect everything, but I say if there's a gulf, the ape might get over it and bite one after all. I know Quintus Curtis jumped over a gulf at Eton. That certainly he jumped in, but it was his fault, you see. If he'd put in more powder, he might have cleared it, and then there would have been no gulf between him and an ape. But that don't matter much because Professor Huxley said the gulf was bridged by a structure. Now, I'm sure I don't wish to be personal, especially after the very handsome way in which Professor Huxley has drunk all our healths. Stop, no, it's we that ought to drink to his health, I'm sure. Highland honors and all, but at the same time, I should have been obliged to him if he'd told us a little more about this structure, especially considering that what nasty, mischievous things that apes are. Tore one of my coattails off at the zoological the other day, he did. He ought to, no, I dare say it would seem like dictation. I don't like that. Never could do it at school. Wrote it all down wrong, got swished. I hate dictation. But I might humbly express that Professor Huxley might have told us a little, you see, about the structure. Was it wood? Was it iron? Was it silver, gold? Like London Bridge when Lady Lee danced over it before it was washed away by a man with a pipe in his mouth. No, I say they can't be. A man with a pipe in his mouth wash a bridge away? No. Why, a fellow can't work hard with a pipe in his mouth at all. Everybody knows that, much less wash away a whole bridge. No, it's quite absurd, it is. Quite, I say. I should like to know something about this structure. It was only quite to my aunt. But then, if Professor Huxley can see the structure, why can't Professor Owen? It can't be invisible, unless it was painted invisible green, like Ben Hall's new bridge at Chelsea. Only, you can see that, of course, for you have to pay now when you go over it. So I suppose the green ain't the right color. But that's another reason why I want to toss it up. Toss up, you see. Whether they say it or not, or which of them should see it, or something of that kind, I'm sure that's the only way to settle. And, oh, by the by, as I said before, only I didn't, but I ought to have. If either of the gentlemen have a crown about them, why, 2 shillings apiece might do. Though I never carry them myself for fear of giving one to a keeper. And then he sets you down for a screw, and because you see, I don't quite see, and no offense to honorable members here, learned and eloquent gentlemen, I mean, and though I don't wish to dictate, I don't quite think, ladies and gentlemen, quite see either. You see that?